We've come to the Horniman Butterfly Garden and also the grounds of the museum, shooting with the 105 f2.8 MC and also with the 50 f2.8 MC macro lenses from Nikon. And we've also been trying out the 105 f mount in comparison to the new Z lens. I have thoughts and ideas after using this. I've used this for a couple of days. What have I let you have it for about 20 minutes?
Okay, I can't judge the image quality because I have to come back home, put them up on the big screen and check the, the pixel peep, But when I put this on first, without trying this, I thought, it's really nice with FTZ adapter. It's not too bad. It's focusing okay.
Yeah.
It's, and generally, you kind of want to pre-focus and then work it manually, But then I put this lens on and it just felt a lot smoother.
Yes, for sure.
Just the focusing is a lot faster. It's just battery. Again, we would use autofocus with manual focus adjustment at the end, but it gets you in the area and then you can fine tune it, with the focus picking, etc. But it just feels a lot smoother to operate. So from user experience, I think it's definitely a step up. I guess it's a native Z lens for Z camera. I guess that's where it comes from.
I've been using this one for the last few days, and the biggest thing that I noticed when I put this one back on, the F-mount version, was the focusing speed and actually kind of the clunkiness of focusing on the older F-mount lens. I'm shooting in AFC, obviously we were shooting butterflies, so AFC was necessary, and it was kind of a very noticeable judder with the F-mount lens on the FTZ. This one is very, very smooth, although I was shooting out in the field a couple of days ago and I did find that you really had to make use of that full limit switch in order to stop the lens from focusing miles away. So I had to bring the focus quite a bit closer.
That's true. So it does help, isn't it?
It does.
So this one also has a limit switch, but it's the opposite way, right?
Yeah, so it's, half a meter to infinity.
And this one's from half a meter to the closest focus.
That's right, which is 29 centimeters.
Which is quite useful if you do macro work.
More useful.
With macro lens.
Yeah, it's way more useful. I also will say that the VR is super smooth on this one. You don't feel it, does it have VR? It does.
I think the clunkiness of autofocus that you referred to is potentially with VR, because VR is clunky on this one,
right,
isn't it? You do feel it.
And you can hear it as well. If you're shooting on something like a Z6, I don't think you're going to notice the difference dramatically from one lens to another. But if you're shooting on a higher resolution camera like a Z7,
it will show, isn't it?
It will definitely show, yeah. Overall, the lightness of this lens, the kind of general handling of it, the fact that you've got that very fine-tuned focus, makes it all kind of make sense. It makes me want one, and I wasn't planning to get one.
Okay, now, have you used it for portraits?
A little bit, mainly cat portraits.
What do you think about this? Because I don't like this lens for portraits.
No.
And that's where the limit switch comes in. So it's probably designed for portrait work. So you say, if you don't want to use it as macro, you can limit to half a meter and then off you go.
Sure.
But the bokeh on this lens is quite nervous, so I don't like to use it for people photography. What do you think about this one?
I actually like the bokeh in this one. This is the photographer in the field.
What a handsome young man in a natural habitat.
That's right. Okay, so that's like wide open at f2.8. The background
it does look nice, definitely less nervous. And I think it could be a viable option for portrait focal distance. So we got 85-1.8 at the moment, but if you need something a little bit longer, this is currently the only answer from Nikon.
Yeah. Do you think that they'll do a 105 portrait lens?
I think a 135 f2 personally, that's what I need. Because as with H5 and 105, they're quite close to each other, so it doesn't make sense to own both.
Yeah.
So obviously H5 is good for indoors and 135 for outdoors. 105 kind of sits in the middle, but it can get a little bit awkward for indoors use sometimes when you have quite small space. So I think having H5 and 135 would allow me to spend more money on lenses.
Yes, and
You
also
know.
means that you can then have the macro sitting in the middle.
Exactly. So obviously you love this lens. So tell me at least one thing that you didn't like about this lens.
Main thing I didn't like about it was the throw. Now this is partly because I'm so used to f-mount lenses, and that kind of, you can really feel the manual focus movement and you can see it clearly in the viewfinder. The throw on this lens, if I show you here, is so slow. Look how long it takes to get from the closest focusing distance to infinity.
Oh, I see. I can see the design. So it's absolutely fine for normal use.
Yeah.
But then once you start to get to so close distances.
It's about, once you get as close as half a meter, then it starts to slow down. So then you go in increments of 3 centimeters, and it takes forever
Oh dear.
to get to the
I'm
closest
with you.
distance.
I guess once you have this, focusing distances, you need to have a very, very fine, tune of the focal distance to get everything sharp. And I guess that makes sense to have such a long throw, but I personally agree with you, and I think it's a little bit too slow for my taste. I would get it a little bit faster.
If they had an option to actually increase the speed of focus when you're manual focusing, just the throw needs to be, because if you're, for example, I was shooting some flowers over here and the lens was focusing way too far back. Now what I should have probably done is just flipped over the limit switch, but I was trying to get a bee in motion, and I was just trying to very quickly swing the focusing slightly closer.
That's true.
And it was like, okay.
If they would have a certain setting in camera to say how long do you want to have your focus throw, let's say, fast, medium and slow, and you can choose, that would be nice. So similar to vibration reduction, where you have normal and then fast
sports.
and exactly.
Or you've got the sort of autofocus speed, where how quickly the autofocus jumps to a new subject.
Exactly.
You've got fast, medium,
Exactly.
slow. So let's talk about the 50 now. I've had mine for about 2 weeks, and you've been using this one for a couple of weeks as well. But you were using that in the butterfly house.
That's right.
How did you find that?
Overall, I would say it's not really suitable for this type of photography because you have to get really, really close to them. So almost, touching the wings.
Yeah.
But I managed to get some shots.
Yeah.
And again, if you pair it with something like Z7 with high resolution, then cropping would allow you to do that.
Yes, true.
One thing I liked about this lens is the depth of field is not as shallow as 105. The problem with 105, because you have such high magnifications, that you really have to struggle between the depth of field, so you have to shoot really with high F numbers to feed the parts fly in. But then you also need to maintain the shut speed, because obviously the wings are flapping, so you want to freeze in the motion. And then you're indoors, so ISO has to be quite high.
Yeah.
So it's really a struggle to get all those things in balance. With 50, it's not such a problem because again, depth of field is less shallow.
Yes.
The focusing is a little bit faster, but I guess that's because it's a small lens as well.
Yes.
So, so it's as usable for this type of things, but I would say probably more for kind of flowers and things like this, or still subjects, so the in-studio product photography like watches, etc. So in conclusion, what are your thoughts so far on this lens?
I would recommend it to anyone who's got a Z camera. I mean, the 105 f-mount is a lovely lens, and if you've got it, you don't necessarily need to change immediately, but I think personally that the difference is noticeable enough to warrant the upgrade.
Absolutely. And then if I'm struggling between the 50 and 105, what to choose, where would you recommend 105 over 50?
105 for sort of anything skittish, like insects. I think doubling it up as a portrait lens is a very nice idea. Obviously it works beautifully for flowers. The 50 I think is a little bit more general purpose. I think that you can do some insect work with it, but butterflies is not so easy. Dragonflies and things like that, not easy at all with the 50, just because of how close you have to get. So a bit more of a kind of multi-purpose lens. This, I would say, if you are just a macro photographer, or if you spend a lot of time doing macro and insects, butterflies, bees and stuff are your bread and butter, let's say, then the 105 is the one that makes the most sense. Thank you very much for watching. Please do give us a like and a subscribe if you like this video, and we'll see you for another review, chat, whatever, very soon.